There's a saying from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. that has very much been in my heart and my mind for the past 9-10 weeks. Dr. King taught that in the end, what matters most is not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. And I think so many of us on a communal level, on an individual level, have truly felt that one of the many negative consequences of this unprecedentedly difficult period in the lives of the Jewish people is the silence of friends and allies, or in some ways even worse, their seeming betrayal of our loyalty and our connection, which makes it even more critical for us to celebrate and honor and cherish those who are our friends, those who have stood by us even when it was difficult or unpopular, or they experienced pressure to do otherwise. One of those significant friends happens to be a very important and impactful and effective civic leader in our community, Congressman Adam Smith, who we are so grateful to have here with us this evening, who has stood by his convictions and his principles and our community, frankly, at great cost to his sense and his family's sense of well-being and safety. But like all of us, we have not allowed those threats and that intimidation to change us, to force us to deny who we are and what we represent and what we value as important. Adam has been a member of Congress, 31 years? Only 27. I gave you an eminence grease that you'll get there, God willing. He's not only served our community well in Congress, but is such a significant national figure. When the right people are in power, he is the chair of the Armed Services Committee. Otherwise, he is a ranking member, as he is now. Sorry for that editorial comment. But even more importantly and closer to our hearts, he and Sarah, who's also with us here this evening, are good personal friends, and we have cherished their friendship throughout the last number of years, but particularly in light of current circumstances. It is an honor and a pleasure to welcome Congressman Adam Smith and Sarah, but Congressman Smith to come forward and share some words with us at this critical time for American Jewry.
Well, thank you very much. It's a great honor to be here, and I really want to thank Dan, certainly for his friendship, leadership in our community, but for years now, he's been an incredibly strong voice, and every time I read, I'm sorry, this is not, I'm going the wrong way though, so yes. Logical problem there, sorry. No, I was just thanking Dan for his leadership, certainly for his friendship and leadership in the community, but long before October 7th, Dan's voice has been one of the strongest in our community of, rationality, reason, but also always trying to seek the peaceful solution, always trying to work with as many people as possible to get us to get along better. Not an easy thing, and he's been just a tremendous voice, and I really appreciate that. And I share his sentiments about how difficult this time is for our community broadly, certainly for the world, but in particular for the Jewish people. And putting aside for at least just the moment any specifics of the politics of Gaza and the Palestinian people and what's going on in Israel, the anti-Semitism that we've seen rise up here locally and the degree to which people have chosen to ignore it is something that we really need to call out. Anti-Semitism has always been an issue, but there's a particular strain of it in this community that we really need to identify and call out. And I could go off on a lengthy rant about the ideological extremism of left-wing activism at this point. I'll try not to and just narrow it. But they've taken on this attitude that you can neatly divide the world between oppressed and oppressor. And once you are identified as an oppressor, you cease to be human to some extent. You no longer are worthy of their concern. The rules are different. And I've had this conversation as I've spoken to people as they've lashed out and attacked different groups in different ways. And I've said, I don't think that's the right way to do it. And they explained to me, I said, you certainly wouldn't want that done to you. And they said, well, it's the power dynamic. Well, once we can identify that someone is, we've decided that they're powerful, we get to treat them horribly. And that is so wrong in so many ways. No matter how you wish to categorize people, you need to treat them all with respect, even the ones you disagree with strongly. And they've failed to do that. And I think the real problem in this aspect of anti-Semitism, and all of you will gasp at this concept, but they've identified Jewish people as oppressors. I would argue that you can make a pretty decent argument that the Jewish people have been on the other side of that equation. But that point aside, that's what they've done. And you see that in just basic humanity to react to what happened in Israel on October 7th, and the silence and the unwillingness to do that is shocking. And we need to understand the ideology behind it and call it out, because it is adding to a growing intolerance in this country. Because what a lot of these people don't seem to understand is once you decide that you can draw that neat line between oppressor and oppressed, a lot of people are going to draw that line in different places, all right? And all they're going to find out is, well, you've given me permission to treat these people horribly because now I've identified them in a certain category. And we really need to push back against that in this community, in this country. And I know, and I've heard from a number of people sentiments like Dan had expressed, nobody has stood up for oppressed people in the United States of America more than the Jewish people. Historically, you've had that empathy, that understanding of what it means in the civil rights movement and the LGBTQ movement, endless groups that have faced real oppression. You have always been there as leaders, fighting for greater equality and greater fair treatment. And that the same is not afforded to you is just completely unacceptable. And that is something that we really need to speak out against, and which I will continue to do so. I do think it is also very important that we continue to support Israel. I do not agree with everything they've done. Just between you, me, and the wall, if they could kick Netanyahu out tomorrow, I'd be a happy guy, all right? But what nobody seems to understand, the very first time, I think it was the night of October 7th that I was on MSNBC, and right before I went on, there was somebody on there who, on the night of October 7th, was saying, well, you have to understand the context around what Hamas did and what they're facing and was literally justifying it. And it gave me the opportunity to, as soon as they got done, the guy asked me some question. I didn't pay any attention to the question. I said, you have to understand the context of what Israel is doing. And the context is, for almost 100 years now, even before 1948, they have been surrounded by people who want to drive them out of existence. And every time peace has been offered, it has been rejected and it has been met with violence. So, and again, I don't agree with every single thing that the Israeli government is doing, but they are facing an existential threat. And if the U.S., and I honestly believe this, if the U.S. were to do, as so many people are asking us to do, and that is withdraw our support from Israel for whatever reason, I believe that Israel would no longer be able to exist as a country. Because they are surrounded not just by Hamas, but by Hezbollah, by Iran, by various militia groups in Syria and Iraq. And the only reason those groups are holding back is because they know that Israel has our backing and they don't think they could do it successfully. Israel is incredibly strong, incredibly powerful, but given the weapons that Hezbollah has, given what Iran has, their ability to survive would be seriously in question if we were not backing them. And whatever whatever disagreements I may have with how Israel is governing things, I don't believe that they don't have a right to exist. So we have to stand up for that. There's a whole lot of other details here which are not being broadcast. And it's not just the left-wing activism that I mentioned that also has given rise to all the anti-Semites, given them greater voice, amplified their voices. And it's also been very depressing to see the way all of this is reported. That basically they're taking Hamas at their word on everything and reporting it as fact. That lack of balance is deeply troubling. And I think it is absolutely correct to call that out for anti-Semitism. Because I happen to know a lot about what's going on in the world. There are no shortage of conflicts. There are no shortage of countries out there in the world who people don't like what they're doing. You know, they don't like what, there's Ethiopia and Somalia and Libya and what's going on in the Balkans. And Israel is the only country in all of that people say shouldn't exist. Now, maybe that's a coincidence, but I think it has a little bit to do with anti-Semitism. Not always. I fully understand that. There are some people who do have the political belief that Israel shouldn't have existed, that it should have been turned into just the country of Palestine. But I think there is a connection that we need to recognize. Now, all of that said, what we need to do is we need to keep moving forward and keep doing things the right way. Whatever words or whatever comes at you. The good news is, I've been doing this for 31. I've had people yelling at me for 1,000 different issues for a long time now. And I got to tell you, the first time it started happening back in 1994, it did. Yeah. I was 29 years old, never experienced it before. Yeah. Been there, done that, and I'm much more prepared to deal with it and know that it should never dissuade me from doing my job the way that I'm supposed to do my job. It shouldn't dissuade any of us from continuing to argue for a more peaceful, civil way of disagreeing with each other and of conducting ourselves in society. Never been more important to have people like Dan and others who, even in the face of all that, are willing to still state their point confidently but respectfully and inclusively, to not back down and not give in to the notion that this is the way we're supposed to govern ourselves. And again, there's a whole lot of different details about the policy and what we should be doing, what the administration should be doing, what our allies should be doing. But as a community, that's the biggest message I want to send to you. Continue to conduct yourself with respect, with justice, peace, fairness as the goal. Do not be cowed by what is coming at you from these other voices. I think it is a perilous time for our country. There are a lot of folks who want to reject representative democracy and the normal rules of civil society and move towards a model of intimidation, harassment, and even violence to get what they want. We must stand against that. I think our country, our representative democracy, for all of its faults and for all of its criticism, is still working pretty darn well. We should not take it for granted. We should stand up for it and make sure that we preserve it. And I'm honored that you would allow me into your house of worship to say a few words tonight. And again, I will close where I started. Got a really good guy over here. So doing a great job for our community and a lot of controversial issues, and compliment to his wife Cindy as well, who's also a great voice in our community and a very, very good friend. So thank you for the chance to be with you this evening.